Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Chilling Neigh Podcast, your premier VGC podcast. My name is Rashil, aka Conkalong, and I'm joined by Sableye. What is up, man?
Not much. Just as always, happy to be here. Apparently all my guesses and predictions I am fraudulent at, but you know what? I'm happy to be here, and hopefully I have a little bit of a better call going into EUIC when I'm actually gonna be there. But
Yeah, well, hey, I mean, some of our betting lines were actually pretty on point. Our bold predictions, not so much, but we'll get into that. So, just came off of San Antonio, which was this past weekend, and we had Justin Tang win his third regional, which is nuts. And we kind of saw when we were talking last week, we were kind of making some predictions of what we thought the meta was going, especially coming off of Birmingham, where we had Miraidon, same Worlds team, win Birmingham, and kind of like an interesting spread where we had Groudon surge, and we kind of made some predictions last week based on that, and we were kind of right, but mostly wrong. um, and so we could kind of dive into that. But Cali Ice, kind of, I mean, it was snowing in San Antonio. It was kind of crazy.
yeah.
So I'll let you just kind of kick off. What were your thoughts looking at watching San Antonio, kind of looking at these results? What stands out to you?
I'm gonna be that guy, and I'm gonna point out the two Koraidons in fourth and fifth place there. But just in case anybody was wondering, if you guys do want to follow along with some of these standings, the link will be down below if you are watching on YouTube. I don't even know if I can put the link in the. Is there like a description on the Spotify thing that I can put the link in? I'm sure I
Yeah,
can. Either
yeah,
way, link will be down below if you're following on YouTube, and hopefully down below if you're following along elsewhere. But no, but like you said, it's for me. It's these two Koraidons. This is something that everybody consistently told me was bad because I was running Koraidon for the longest time, and I have tweets where I'm like, why does everybody always tell me the restricted I'm playing is bad? Like, I could use Calyrex Ice Rider and people will tell me it's bad. I don't understand. But you know what? Good to see Koraidon get some of the justice it deserves, in my opinion.
yeah. That was like, I think it's funny because like all the talk, I think in a lot of the circles leading up to like from Birmingham to San Antonio was like, look at this Groudon, like this Chinese Sun team, right? Like look
Yep.
at Groudon. It's gonna be everywhere. It's gonna be the restricted. And I kind of made the prediction last week where it's like, you know what? It's gonna underperform. And I said none in top 16. I was wrong. It made top eight, but there was only one in top 16. And it did kind of underperform, I think, to the level of where people were thinking. But then we have two Sunsetters in Koraidon, and I think what's so interesting is like in this format, especially like the physical restricted runs clear amulet.
Yes.
That is the standard. That has been the standard pretty much. Last or in Birmingham, we saw an AV Groudon, so it's like okay, a little bit of mix up. That's pretty cool. Like not worried as much about intimidate. Worried about something else. Worrying about bulk, but here we saw Koraidon with scale shot, and I think this is a little bit of a like Reg H bleeding into Reg G. Like some takeaways from like Reg H. We had the Dragonite with scale shot, and that was like a very dominant set in Reg H. Now we have it. We're finally seeing some of those adaptations come into Reg G, where we had scale shot Koraidon on the fourth place team. Um, with loaded dice as the item, which is like very interesting because with the AV Groudon, it's like okay, you're sacrificing the clear amulet for an item that gives you bulk. This is just an offensive item, really, but not clear amulet. It's to give you that skill shot. So I guess what are your thoughts on now physical restricteds maybe veering away from that clear amulet, and are we edging close to that return of Ensign where it's like, all right, Ensign is everywhere. Wolf pulls up and he's like, everyone's underrating Will Ensign, and just it starts winning regionals.
Personally, I don't like it. I'm gonna be honest. I don't hate it, but like if I say that like the big bold statement, like it gets views, you know.
Yeah,
No, but I do think Clear Amulet is the superior item, especially on Koraidon. I run Koraidon over Groudon. One of the main reasons here would be one, the fighting type, which is very, very strong. And then two, my secondary reason for running it would be just the consistency of, not missing my moves, having that clear amulet, it just takes away so many things that I have to think about during a game. Like, ooh, what if I miss? Do I have to cover for that? I can't really click this here in case I miss, right? That's one of the reasons I run Koraidon. Now, the loaded dice, in my opinion, kind of takes away from that secondary option. All of a sudden, I have to think, oh, what if Incineroar comes in and intimidates me? What if I miss my scale shot? Now, it does fix one of the problems with Koraidon, and that was not being able to fit the Dragon type move. Because you
Yep.
couldn't do that before. Like on the base sets with the Clear Amulet, you need to get the Flame Charge because you need to be able to speed boost. You need your Flare Blitz, you need your Fighting move, and then you need Protect. Right? So you really didn't have room for something like that Dragon move, whether it be Dragon Claw, Breaking Swipe, whatever you wanted to use. So it does fix that issue, and I definitely think it was a very good meta call into the tournament. However, I don't see it having as much success as the format continues. But I mean, for the tournament, it was a perfect meta call. Like the way the team functioned as well. Like I was playing around with the Bandit Entei after the regional. Nobody knows what's happening. Nobody knows their lines into Koraidon Bandit Entei. It's like incredibly good.
Yeah, I mean, like exactly to your point. Like I think that Entei is a really nice piece on that team because now you do have a Mon that can't get
Yeah,
intimidated, right? That can't get picked
exactly.
out, and now it's kind of all right. If you want to bring Ensign, sure, but you're gonna get collision coursed, and you have an Entei that's not getting intimidated and it's just doing ridiculous damage in the sun.
Yep.
Um, and kind of going back to the point about Ensign, like so Ensign had 32% usage day one, 30 like call it 33% usage in day two. But when you look at top 16, there's two, like that's 12.5% usage. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
just two instants and one in top eight, right? So it converted very poorly. And that I think was a big reason. It's really interesting to see because like the restricteds, especially we saw the last two regionals that did well without the clear amulet, the Groudon and the Koraidon, both have great matchups into instant, right? Like you do not want to switch in on a collision course, you do not want to switch in on a precipice blades,
Yep.
even intimidated, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense on something like that versus like Valley Ice is a lot harder because an intimidated glacial lance is really doing nothing
Yeah.
to an instant, and if they have Wisp too, you're just really screwed. So I agree with you that I don't see. I think Clear Amulet will be still the dominant item, and it will be maybe even. It's weird to say back in full force because it is still like the most used item on all these
Yeah.
physical restricteds, but I think it's going to be a lot harder to have success with an item like a loaded dice or an assault vest when Instant picks up even more because now like every time Instant looks like, oh, it's on fraud alert, it just comes back and wins a regional. It comes back and wins, a major. And we have EYC coming up too, which is like all these results. I mean, I think these are the two. We have a couple Latin American. We have Puerto Rico and we have one other regional. That's like a Latin American regional leading up to UIC, I believe. But I think these are like the biggest tournaments that we're gonna have leading up to it. So now everyone's gonna start looking at this and we're gonna see like what results kind of come from this leading forward into an internats. Um, but yeah, I now want to switch to Cali Ice because obviously it won, and we need to talk about it a little bit. We said going in,
Yeah.
you and I both said betting favorite should be Cali Ice. Coming off of a Miraidon win, it's going to be really good into it, and we were right about that. We were wrong about what the smart bet was. We both were really big on Zom, and yikes, Zom did not perform well.
Hey, it's there.
But
It's
let's
there
let's
in
talk.
11th place. It's there at 11th.
Yeah, one in top 16, but Cali Ice I think all over top 16. It's I mean obviously mirror match in finals. There's four in
Yep.
top 8, and then six in top 16. Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that. Sounds about
So
right. Yeah.
what's I guess like what do you think about Cali Ice moving forward now? Is this like gonna just be the revolving door of all right now Cali Ice won, everyone's gonna adapt to this, especially now because this pace that I mean it was a mirror match in finals, so we have like
Yeah.
the team everyone's focusing on is now this Tangang team, and they release the pace, so we know kind of all the spreads. Are people going to be targeting this down going into UIC? How would you kind of view this?
I don't know if people will necessarily be targeting it down, but people will be ready for it, right? the meta is definitely going to shift to some extent to say, hey, we've got to be at least ready for this team. We've got to have a game plan into this team because just on paper, it is incredible, right? Their only issue I find is it was very strong for this tournament. However, I feel like now that we know about it, like the Terra Fairy Calyrex Ice, the really, really bulky Ogerpon, I feel like a lot of that now just you can find ways to punish that in your building. Whereas like the other Terra types on like the Cali Ice with like the Terra Fire and the Terra Water, those are a lot more consistent in terms of longevity and just in general over matchups. But the Terra Fairy was a fantastic call for this tournament. Clearly, I could have disagreed with it, but it would still be a fantastic call. But I do agree with it. I definitely think it's a very cool concept as well moving forward. But overall, like I said, to answer the question, it is probably going to go nowhere. Like the team is going to be around like that Miraidon team. It is one of the top teams in the format, but it's one of those things like people are going to be ready for it. But Calyrex is just such a consistent restricted. Same with like the Miraidon. It's like, yeah, okay, Miraidon didn't perform well. I'm sure we'll get into that later. But
Yeah.
you always have to respect that these consistent builds exist, right? Like this is a consistent Cali Ice build. It's going to exist. You have to be ready for it. Whether it wins another event, that is debatable. That depends on really kind of what happens if another Cali Ice team comes up. And it takes a lot to win an event. But this team will be around. It's not going anywhere, but I don't know if it's going to necessarily win another event.
Yeah, I'm curious if you agree with this. I think Cali Ice is probably the most versatile restricted when it comes to team building. Like even here we see in top 16, like we have obviously the final, like the mirror match, and then they also had well, okay, Nicholas Donnelly
Yeah,
was 19, so not
yeah,
quite top 16, but all three
close
of them
enough.
did extremely well with this team. But then we have, Tanner in sixth place with a different Cali Ice build. We have seventh place with a very different Cali Ice build. Ninth place was a very different Cali Ice build. We have some, I think 16th place seems similar to another one, but still some different pieces actually. None of these are like, besides obviously the Tang build, like none of these are
Yeah.
the same six Mons. We have like different balance versions. We have a hard trick room version. We have, um, just a lot. I feel like it's very flexible. I mean, the tanks were running a fast Cali Ice. We have, min speed, like hard trick room Cali Ices. Kind of the speeds can be all over the place. The Terra types can be all over the place. The partners all over the place. Whereas, like, when we were talking last week about Miraidon, right? Like, six or five of the same six keep winning with Miraidon. Zom seems to have, like, all right, it's got, Rilla, Ensign, etc. Like, it's like balanced pieces around it that want to protect. Cali Shadow has its either, like, all right, I want to protect the horse because it's a lot frailer than Cali Ice. You need to like protect it with some follow me, protect it with some fake out, or you're gonna go, hyper offense, side spam, whatever it is. Whereas like Cali Ice feels like it's just because this team won. I feel like it can't be like a. I wouldn't go to EYC saying, okay, no, this is the Cali Ice build that I'm gonna. I like Cali Ice could be any build could still win EYC, and I wouldn't be surprised if it still does extremely well with just there's six more Cali Ices in top 16 of UIC, and it's six new builds. Like it feels just so versatile to me. What do you think?
I agree. It's definitely the most versatile of the restricteds, just because you don't necessarily need as much from your partners to make it go. Right? Generally, in these restricted formats, you have these teams that really just focus on getting that restricted going. So something like Koraidon, let's say, really, really appreciates having that Flutter main beside it. So you're probably not seeing too many successful Koraidon teams without that. Now, I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's less likely for it to happen, right? Same with like, the Kyogre teams. Kyogre teams really want that tailwind setter or to be that really bulky, the OA version team, right? Like, it really just depends. Like, in those ones, they really appreciate the Rillaboom, the Raging Bolts, right? The Insins. Kyogre Insins has been a tale as old as time. Those two guys, like, they're together 90% of the time if we're going to look at teams like that, right? But with Calyrex,
Yeah.
you don't need the other pieces to necessarily make it go. There isn't that one piece that's like, yeah, this needs to be here because it's just so good at doing what it does to support this piece. And that opens up the door for, like you said, all these different variants. I will point out, Amoonguss is probably the closest thing on Calyrex Ice
Mhm.
to that piece that makes it go. And if you're looking at a lot of these Cali Ice teams, The first three there do all have Amoonguss, which not surprising. Obviously, like you said, there are
Yep.
variants without it. But then you go back 16th place, 17th place, 19th place. These all are Cali
Yep.
Ice Amoonguss comps. And I think if there is a consistent partner for Cali Ice, my guess would be Amoonguss. But as you said, it's versatile. It's not really defined by needing to have this piece, not defined by needing to have that piece. It does its own thing. It's such a good Pokemon. It has the bulk, it has the offense. It doesn't need that restricted to or the partner to it to make it really necessarily function. And I think that's what's setting it apart and it's why it's so good right now.
Yeah.
But
I agree. And I feel like we gotta talk about it. Like we've gone too long without talking about it, but an exact mirror in finals,
yes.
and like, I mean, they built together. I mean, we've Tangang has kind of been around. Like these guys, we see them all over Twitter. Like we see them at tournaments. Like they're very close friends. They build together all the time. They're both insanely talented players. Consistently doing well, cutting
Yes.
tournaments all the time. I mean, this is obviously Justin's third regional win, and but Shilling has a ton of accomplishments of his own. He has his own regional win. He has top cut worlds. He's just done insane stuff. So I know we were talking a little bit before we started recording, but how would you record? Like, because I've actually never had to face this before, but you were talking about how you have, where like, how do you even start to approach a exact mirror when you know that like, okay, everything's gonna speed tie, everything has the same amount of bulk, you know all your calcs, they know all your calcs, like
The
everything is the same. How do you even start to approach that?
the short answer is you don't, and you just kind of play Pokemon. Um I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm sure there's like actual like ways to go about and approach it and think like, yeah, okay, it's gonna do this, it's gonna do that. We should do this line. And the thing is, at players like the Tang levels, right? When you're that good at the game, you're going into this, and I feel like it's just you're trying to call your opponent out, and especially when you
Yeah,
build together, right? Because it's like if I'm on one end of that matchup, I'm like, okay, I know my best line into a lot of this is A plus B. But if my opponent also knows that their best line into a lot of this is A plus B. So they know that I may want to lean to that. So what if I just call them out on countering that lead? But then they know that I know that we know. It's just one of those like mind game things. And it's really weird. It's really awkward. There is no necessarily like correct way to approach it, I don't think. I've done this numerous times. I build with people from my local scene, right? So sometimes we get to like finals of a league challenge and it's like, oh, now what? Or we play round one of the league challenge. It's like, oh, now what? And finals is a weird case, right? Because once you're in final, it's like, hey, the team we built, it's winning this thing. We're going to go, we're
yeah,
just going to play Pokemon and we're going to have a good time. But when it happens round one, or, it happened to me I want to say round three of Atlantic City in 2019. And it's like, it's one of those things you kind of have to go in with the understanding that luck is going to happen, right? You're gonna lose more speed ties than the other person, or you're gonna win, or you're gonna win more speed ties than the other person. At some point, a crit is gonna happen in their way, right? Like a lot of these games that are mirror matches, they're either gonna come down to a call out because you're just so well versed in what your opponent wants to do because you know them, you built with them, or it's gonna come down to a very similar game plan, and then all of a sudden just, haha, I'm gonna win this crucial speed tie at this one moment, and it's gonna change the game, right? So it's ugly, it's weird, but you know what? Like I said, when you get to finals, you're just out there. You're gonna have a good time playing Pokemon at that point, right? Like, come on.
it's pretty crazy. I was like, as I was watching the set, I think like they did a really good job of playing in a way where both of them were avoiding speed ties.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because they have Tailwind and they have Trick Room on the team, so you have a lot of methods of speed
Mm-hmm.
control. And we saw games where Tang had or not saying Tang, but they're both Tangs. But Justin had set up Tailwind and Shiliang had set up Trick Room, to kind of
Yeah.
slow down the speed control. So we saw a lot of that. But game one still ended up coming down to a speed tie in the last turn, which
Yeah.
was I thought hilarious. But throughout the set, they actually did I think a very good job of. I mean, at the end of the day, you really don't want it to come down to a speed tie, so it makes sense, like,
Yeah.
really trying to play the game where that's not, you're not relying on a 50-50 chance of who's going to win this set. You really want to just try to outplay, but it was really fascinating to see, like, that set is all mind games, right? Like, that it's there's no team advantage. It's just all mind games, and I think it was incredible to watch. It was super fun, and I think we were all super lucky to see two insanely talented players play at the highest level with again, pretty much as neutral playing field as you get. It's just about who's gonna win those mind games.
Hmm.
Um, and now Justin winning his third regional, and we have a lot of people, that have, well, a lot of people is actually a big overstatement, but there are people that have more regional wins, but three, and he started, I think his first regional wins were in 23, right? 2023. So three regional wins in like 3 years of, or 2 years, like 3 years of competing, like that's a pretty insane pace, and he's still super young and he has a lot of time. I mean, when we're talking about the greats of VGC, I mean Wolf is obviously kind of Wolf and Ray are at the top, and those are hard mountains to climb. Wolf having 10 regional wins is insane, but
Yeah.
I think we're kind of watching two Justin and Chilling, two like future. I mean, they're already the great, like among the greats of VGC,
Yeah.
but potentially can be stacking accomplishments to the level where we're talking about them as like, oh my god, are they due to win worlds at some point? Are they due to like just have these insane accomplishments by the time they're stopped playing, or by the time in 5-10 years? I'm curious, like, kind of how you think, like, having success at that level. I mean, neither of us have had success that crazy, obviously, but like just thinking about like how do you come off of like how would you kind of approach, like, okay, I did well at a tournament like this, and like keeping that hunger and keeping that like mindset of like, what, like not getting down on yourself when you have such a high precedent of success, and then you're thinking, okay, like how do you keep that going and not feel like, all right, it's because I think you and I have both been there where we felt like, okay, we've had a good success, we've had like a successful tournament run, and now it's like kind of like that pressure of keeping up, and there's such the public eye of like, all right, this is Justin Tang, this is Shiliang Tang, like how are they, people are tracking how they're doing at different tournaments, like
Yeah.
they perform well. How do you feel like, from our perspectives, I guess, how do you feel like someone would approach that, and like how do you feel that from an outsider perspective of like watching, like how much pressure must be on them?
I think the best way to approach this is just to like forget about the pressure. The pressure doesn't exist. You make the pressure for yourself, right? And obviously, when you're competing this high, whether you're whatever your name is, when you're competing at this high level and you are that good at the game, you know how to put aside that pressure. Whether it's you're telling yourself, hey, it just doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. I'm playing this game for me, and I know I'm good at the game. And you can just approach every matchup that way. If you can get to that spot and you can just fine tune and say, you know what, I'm going to go in, I'm going to play my game, I'm going to play my tournament. I don't really care what people think, because let's be real. If I asked you right now and I said, hey, when's the last time Justin did poorly at an event? What would you say?
I could not tell you.
Right.
There's
Right.
I have no idea.
Now,
Yeah,
now if I asked you, when's the last time you did poorly at an event? You would probably know.
definitely. I mean,
Right.
worlds.
So the pressure comes from yourself, right? Like, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, okay. You went 4-3. Some random person on Twitter.com is probably gonna be like, "Oh no, Justin went 4-3. He's washed." It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, no one's gonna remember this tournament in a week or a month. That is literally going to be you that remembers the last time you had a poor tournament, right? And if you can get to that mindset, that's what I think really helps take that mindset to the next level, because then you're not worried about it. You're not putting pressure. You take away the outside pressure, and you're just you playing a game of Pokemon. And obviously I've struggled to do that a lot, but it's definitely something. If you can get to that spot, I think it's very good. What are your thoughts on it, though? How do you think the best way to approach it is?
Yeah, no, this is exactly why I wanted to bring this up, because like 95-99% of people, like probably 99% of people that play VGC don't have nearly the accomplishments that Justin has, or Shiliang has, and may never reach, like will probably never reach those levels, right? It's just insane. They both have insane levels of success, but I think all of us have like whether you're kind of just starting out or whether, you're somewhere in between. I think everyone has a view of themselves and a view of what their own success is, and have probably reached some sort of peak that they've reached where it's like, okay, this was, you know, this tournament, for me, my best tournament still was Milwaukee in 2023,
Yeah.
right? And you kind of come off of whatever your best tournament is, whether it's, okay, I finally got day two, or finally, I won this big grassroots tournament, whatever it is. And you think to yourself like, all right, now, and then you have a bad tournament, right? Like you come off of it and you're like, all right, I went 0-3 drop at this local, or I just did terrible in this online tournament, or I didn't day two tournament, and you start to kind of really feel down on yourself. And I think the reason I wanted to bring this up is I think like everyone has those views of themselves of like, all right, you may not be, Justin, you may not be shilling, but you have your own views of like, what, I'm a good player because I've done these things and now I have this own pressure to keep it up. But like just like you were saying, like Justin, I'm sure has had, bad tournaments that no one really remembers, and I'm sure his, standard of bad is no, not the same as our standard of bad. But and I think it's like important, and the way that he, clearly is able to be resilient, just keep going, and put so much effort into the game. And I think that's important for all of us is making sure that you understand, what, success is possible. I've seen it in myself, but at the same time, that doesn't, my tournament results don't define me. I know how, like, especially in a game that's as volatile with, as VGC, when we have like a bunch of, RNG, when we talk about all the time. And I think it's important to remember that. And I think like that was something where, again, none of us are probably going to compare to them at any point, but at the same time, we all have our own levels of success, and I think it's important to know that that's really hard to sustain. Like I was saying, Justin's won 3 regionals. This is his first regional win in 2 years, which is like, oh my God, what a drought! It's been 2 years since he won a regional.
Yeah.
But for him, it's like, okay, you know what? I'm sure once you win your first 2 regionals,
Yep.
it's kind of like, okay, this is going to be the success I have forever. And then you go without it for a bit, and then you come back and win it. Like that's something that's possible, I think, for everyone, where it's like, okay, even if you have success early or you have success at some point and you go without it for a while, having that mindset of being resilient, keeping it up, and getting back to that point is definitely possible. Um, I thought that was something that
No,
I
definitely. I
felt
think
was
it's good. Good shout.
yeah,
Something to bring up for sure.
yeah. Okay, so going back to the San Antonio results, I know we took a little bit of a detour here. But I think the thing that we were talking about earlier that we definitely need to touch on is this tournament was extremely unkind to Miraidon. So let's talk about, where did Miraidon go? We have where's the first one that placed here? I think
27th.
27th. That's insane.
Yep, and it's
Is
the
that
only
right?
one in top 32.
That's crazy. Okay, so I mean, we were talking a little bit last week about, all right, people kind of really prepping into their Miraidon matchup. Do you think this is just like a revolving door? Like, is this Miraidon's gonna be, back on top within like 2 regionals, or is it like, all right, you know what? It's once you do this well at Worlds, at Birmingham, right afterwards, like Miraidon's gonna be flying under the radar for a bit.
I'm about to get this podcast canceled. So here's my thing, okay? I am gonna go ahead and say that I don't think this is Miraidon's fault for underperforming. And my
Interesting.
answer here is, if I'm looking at these top placing teams and like even just the Miraidon teams, right? I feel like the players that chose to pilot Miraidon, right, weren't necessarily as strong as some of the other players in the past that we've seen pilot Miraidon. Now, obviously, there's outliers here. Like, obviously, Aaron Trailer, fantastic player, piloted Miraidon. Still got 41st, right? But this could be a numerous combination of anything, right? It could be, maybe he just had one bad matchup and, the winning in, right? There could be numerous things that happened, Maybe he pulled, like, the 5 Groudons in a row, right? You don't know what these stories are. Maybe he got crit. Maybe he got unlucky, right? Maybe he just had a bad game, right? It happens. Like you said before, you used the word volatile. That's what Pokemon is. But I don't think we had the sheer numbers of quote unquote top level players playing this team going into this event as we did, let's say, going into Birmingham, where we had, like Marco was on Miraidon, other top level players. Obviously, William, I believe, won it as well with Miraidon, right? It was William, right? That was their name. I'm not mistaken here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Right? We have these top level players on Miraidon. Whereas here, no disrespect to the players that ran Miraidon by any means, but it's not like just in sheer volumes of like top level players on this team, I didn't see it. Right?
Yeah.
We saw, like I said, like you said, the CIR was the big call for the weekend. A lot of top players that I can name are on CIR, right? We had a lot of other players saying, oh, Groudon is the hype. So a lot of them went over that way. Some of them were saying Zammy. Some of them were saying Ogre. But none of these top level players, in my opinion, were really saying, yeah, Miraidon's going to come out and win this thing. So a lot of them didn't bring it.
Yeah.
That's my take, right? Like, I don't think it necessarily did that badly. Obviously, it didn't do well, but I think it didn't have the sheer opportunities to do as well because less people were bringing it.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. Like, I think it's a bit of a combination. Like, we see that day one, the restricted usage, Miraidon was number one,
Yeah,
17%. And then day two conversion though fell to 8%. So didn't convert too well. So I think you're like completely on the right track of like there was just not enough like I think the best of the best, like the cream of the crop players, kind of being like, all right, Miraidon's the call. I think like everyone after you see Miraidon win a couple tournaments in a row, you're like, especially I think, and that's what this format is. You see restricted win or you see restricted do super well, and you're either like, okay, you know what, that's not the call anymore. I got to counter it, or hey, it did well, but not as well as I think it could have. Like I think a lot of people thought that about Groudon last from Birmingham, where it's like, okay, got top eight, two in top eight, but didn't quite win. So it's like, okay, and Miraidon won, so maybe Groudon is the wave. But I think people did, maybe did some 3D chess there, where it's like, okay, Groudon is going to be the call for San Antonio, so let me run Ice Rider, and I think, and Miraidon was doing well too, so let me run Ice Rider. So I think we have a little bit of that revolving door where it's going
yeah,
to be like,
for sure.
okay, a lot of people are going to gravitate towards the restricted that feels like it has the best matchup into what just did well. So I like, again, the top restricteds are I don't think are ever going to stop being the top restricteds. It's more so like what's the call for UIC? Well, probably not Ice Rider for a lot of the top players, maybe some, but it's or maybe like an adaptation of Ice Rider, because I think it's so versatile in its team building. But maybe it's something like Zom, where we keep predicting the Zom win, but I think
We'll be right
I think something
eventually.
like, yeah. But I think something that has a good matchup into or maybe Kali Shadow, something that has a good matchup into Ice Rider. So yeah, I think, and then Kali Shadow, we see. I mean, we set the line at 1.5. You took the over, I took the under, and it had one in top eight. So and with Fissure Tinglu, which we saw full effect in top four, which is I thought hilarious.
Yep.
But we have Dozo Tinglu kind of making its reappearance. So I think we have a lot of it. This format has been cool because I think a lot like we see a lot of interesting partners for these restricteds popping up on a lot of these teams with Umbreon, Ditto, Dozo Tinglu, Blood Moon or Slunas, Mirgol, Jumpluff, like a lot of different variation, but at the same time, it's kind of that revolving door of like, okay, this is the restricted that did well, time for it to not do so well,
Yep.
and it's just kind of that little bit of a rock paper scissors.
Yeah. Agreed.
Um,
I do want to
all
touch
right,
up.
I
Go
want
ahead.
to. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to shout out Daway's team here in third with the Cali Shadow. I think it
Yeah,
was a fantastic approach to Cali Shadow in the format as it stands right now. Everybody's ready for this Cali Shadow to be on that, the Calyrex Shadow balance, right? Where you have, the Incin, the Rillaboom, it's the revolving door of Pokemon, you get a nasty plot up, and then you get your damage, and then it's more revolving door of Pokemon, and then you get some more damage, right? Everybody's kind of ready for that Cali Shadow.
yeah,
But the secondary option that they had on this team just allowed it. I think was a very good meta call because now all of a sudden you have like Tinglu Dondozo And you have to play so specifically around Tinglu Dondozo to know, not get sand tombed into Yawned, into cycling down, right? And all of a sudden, you get chipped down on your first two Pokemon. By the time they actually get through one of the Tinglu or the Dondozo, Calyrex comes in, cleans up the two Pokemon at low HP, is now at +2, and you can either close it off with a late game Tailwind, your Urshifu, plus your Calyrex. You have a lot of options. And then if you were scared that they were going to be like, oh, they're going to break through my Tinglu Dondozo, no, they're not. I'm just going to go Whimsicott Calyrex, right? It was that, I think that secondary mode that this team provided was so good going into this tournament, and not something people were ready for. It was a really good meta call.
Yeah, I mean, we saw, I think it was Dawe versus Luca in the top 8 match, and we saw just Yondozo, Tinglu was just giving him fits. It was just putting everything to sleep, and especially chipping everything down where it's like Kali Shadow can steamroll you so fast that you really want to conserve your resources and like have stuff at full health so that you can take an Astral Barrage and fire back. And when you're at like 50%, 60% health, or you're just hoping your Mon wakes up in time, like you're probably lost at that point. And it's oblivious, so you can't taunt the Dondozo either. So it's just, we saw that in game 1 of Tang versus Dawe, where that Urshifu that has taunt on their team can't really do any, do anything to Dondozo. It's just gonna sit there and it's just gonna yawn stuff. It's gonna fissure and maybe land a fissure that's really important, which it did in the first game. And so it's a really big nuisance. But it was a very cool. I mean, Dawe is part of my local scene here in New England, and they've been. Our local scene here is kind of getting crazy. New England's been popping off in the last a few regionals in the last tournaments, but they are extreme. I mean, they've crushed me in locals, and they are very hard to beat. So extremely talented player. Can't wait. I think this is their third place. They got third place at Baltimore. So super excited to see what Dawe continues to do, and definitely rising star in VGC. Okay, I want to transition to a game. So we're gonna play Wavelength.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know, Wavelength. So Ryan's gonna pick a number 1 through 10, and then I'm gonna ask a few questions, and he's gonna give me some responses, and I'm gonna try to gauge what the number is and guess and try to guess the number by the end of it. So, Ryan, and then please let us know in the comments if you were able to guess it especially quicker than me. Let's see how I can do. So, Ryan, do you have your number in mind?
I will go. Yeah, I'll write my number down right now. I'll write it down. I locked it in. Not that anybody cares that I wrote it down, but I did lock my number in. Yes.
Okay. All right. So first, I want you to give me a restricted mon. We'll start off simple. I'm gonna give me a restricted mon based on how well it did at San Antonio.
How well it did at San Antonio. I'll go Kyogre. I'll go Kyogre.
Okay, Kyogre didn't, wasn't crazy good, but did have some success here. So I mean, we have one in top 16. We have a few or two in top 16. So okay, all right. So I'm thinking early, somewhere in the middle. Maybe 6-ish, 7-ish, maybe something like that. All right. Next question is: give me a move, a status condition, or like a team based on how rage-inducing it is to face against.
What kind of question is this? Based on how rage-inducing?
Yeah, so 1 would be something like,
Okay.
something simple that's like, if it happens, it's like whatever. And then 10 is like...
Zamazenta, but it has the Fluttermane with Thunderwave.
Okay. Alright. So, annoying. Not the worst. It's not like Dire Claw, or it's not like, Smeargle Muck. It's so okay, somewhere 6-ish, 7-ish, something like that. All right. Final question is: give me a tournament location based on how fun that location is.
Okay, see, this is a problem because I don't leave my house, so I'm the wrong guy to ask. This is where the whole thing is gonna be wrong. This is where the whole thing is just gonna end up in the garbage.
Your interpretation, however you view it.
I don't think I can. I'll say a regional location. This is so
Or
annoying.
any major location. Any major.
I'll go like I'm gonna say Pittsburgh just because I don't know. Like I genuinely don't know. I'll say Pittsburgh, but like I think that's just wrong.
Okay, Pittsburgh maybe brings me down a little, but I feel like not a lot to do in Pittsburgh. Maybe Pittsburgh people will yell at me in the comments or something, but I feel like it's okay. Kyogre, Zom with Fluttermane, Thunderwave, and then Pittsburgh. I'm gonna lock in. I'm feeling now. It might be five, somewhere between five and six. I'm gonna go 6. I'm gonna stick with my gut.
This is why I write the number down. I can do this for dramatic effect. It will be reversed, but it is 6.
There we go. Okay,
okay,
good answers,
but why
good
did you
answers.
throw that question at me, bro? I don't do stuff at regionals. I talk to people at regionals and I follow them around. I don't know what city. And then I was like, oh, Vancouver, but everybody loves Vancouver. That's like a 10 for me. Like Vancouver's regional location is fantastic. And then I was going to be like Toronto, but I know a lot of people actually love the Toronto venue and the Toronto location. So it's like, that's tough for me. And then I was going to be like, you know, like I wanted to do like a Chicago area, like a Collinsville, but like I didn't know what would be like almost like a true neutral. And I know Pittsburgh's lower. Like I didn't really enjoy Pittsburgh all that much, no offense. But like it's just one of those ones that I didn't know what to say that was like in between. Like I remember the good ones and I remember the ones that like I didn't like as much. I don't remember the in between regionals. Like what would you have said?
No, that's a tough one. I think like I don't know. I agree. Like I'm trying to think of like the places I've been and stuff, and like Knoxville is low. Like
see, but people love
Milwaukee,
Knoxville.
Really, I do not. I did not enjoy Knoxville at all. I mean, I liked Milwaukee more than I think most people because I did well there, and because I just had fun at the bars there too. But like, I don't know. That is a tough one. A six location is a tough one to. Maybe like Sacramento. I don't know. No.
See, I don't know. Like, that's the thing. I didn't know I didn't know which way to go.
So, yeah. I think you did a good job. You did a good job.
Hey, we got there. We got there.
We got there. All right. Well, now I want to wrap up here soon, but we have the global challenge coming up this weekend. Just want any quick like tips for people on playing the global challenge / any sort of predictions on what we'll do really well, what we'll win, something like that.
All right. I'll go one tip, one prediction, and then I guess I'll throw it back your way. Same concept, I guess.
Yeah, perfect.
But my concept here, guys, it's my big number one tip is 100% just pace yourself. Make sure you're taking breaks. And I'm not saying it has to be, play 3 games and take a 5-hour break. When I say take a break, it could be simple as getting up, walking from your front door to your back door, taking a sip of water. Just something as simple as that. You're playing Pokemon. Pokemon, in my opinion, you're not meant to spam 45 games in a row. So make sure you're taking that break. Take that breath in between each set if you do end up having to play, a bunch of games in a row, because it's going to happen, right? A lot of people have limited time, especially myself this weekend, right? Like I've got a cup and a challenge this weekend, so like chances of me playing my games spread out the way I want to, not gonna happen. So take a breath, make sure you're giving yourself that break regardless of how long it is. Get your mind right for the next match, because if you start pressing, oh man, I lost to a flinch, next game, it's probably not a great idea for you. Make sure you get that second, that 5 minutes, whatever it is, whatever you need to reset. That's my tip. And then my prediction, there's going to be a lot of annoying things. Like you're gonna see, like here's the thing, okay? You have to remember this is a single restricted format in best of one closed sheets. You are going to see there's going to be a lot. And like you see it in Reg H. Like he's like, oh, I just lost to like weakness policy Goldango and some weird stuff, right? But now what's more likely gonna happen is you're gonna see a lot more. Oh, this random thing clicked Terra Dark Terra Blast and blew up my Kali Shadow because it was scarfed, right? You're gonna see a lot more random Terras and random techs just to annoy the single restricted on certain teams, and that's my statement. You're gonna see whether if you're a Miraidon player, you're gonna see all the Terra grounds. If you're a Kali Shadow player, you're gonna see all the random Terra Darks, triple normal teams. You're gonna see all that jazz, right? So you're gonna see a lot of those. That's my prediction. So gonna see a lot of those clips on Twitter, I'm sure.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so my tip would be depending on where you like, depending on what your goal is for the season and for the global challenge in terms of like, are you shooting for that top 75? Are you shooting for just like, I want a good placement in this global challenge or whatever it is? Kind of make sure you have a goal going in because I feel like a lot of people start to they get to like maybe 1650s and they start to like hedge like all right should I keep going should I not keep going and really like think okay am I close to top 75 and is that my goal then maybe okay you know what make sure that I can hit my best finish limits get my points and then maybe push for more in a later tournament unless you're like really feeling yourself during this one then maybe push for higher but if you're like kind of far from top 75 what I would say is try to win. Like, and then I know that's a hard, like, obviously winning the global challenge extremely difficult. But I feel like if you're playing to like play and just try to go as high as you can, you'll start to play to win versus not to lose. And I feel like a lot of people start to play not to lose once they hit a certain threshold where it's like,
Yeah.
I really don't want to drop here, but I want to play one more game just to get to 1670 or to 1700, and then you play a little safe and you play a little cautious, and now you lost a game, and now you start to all right, let me get those points back, and you start to tilt, and it just goes downhill. So I would say like really have a goal going in, and if your goal is like you know what, I just want to have a really good placement, play to win, don't play not to lose.
Yeah.
I think that's really big. And then my prediction is that I think we're gonna have I think a player who everyone pretty much already knows is gonna win the best is gonna win the global challenge, and it's gonna be I think it's gonna be Kyogre. I think with Kali Ice doing really well, I feel like Kyogre can be like a really scary mon to face in best of one with like Terra Water, Water Spouts, or Terra like having some weird text on it, and so it's a really I think it's a bold call out, but I feel like this could be Kali Ice is gonna be all over, and like Dozo stuff, Dozo Weezing is gonna be everywhere too. I'm sure. But I feel like Kyogre's kind of positioned to do well in a best of one tournament right now. So that's my prediction. We'll see. We'll see how that turns out. I will not be playing Kyogre, so I do not think I will will win. But I'm gonna be trying my best. We'll see.
Wait,
I'm
you already
playing
know
the
what
kind
team
of
you're running? I'm still struggling. At the time of recording,
I'm
that is,
running a
anyways.
Gipsy.
I'm gonna
I've
figure it
been
out
doing
tonight.
well. Like I've been around like top 100 of best of one showdown ladder, so we'll see how it goes. But I don't have like high hopes for getting too high. I think I'll probably do well on day one. You know, you're gonna see your classic 15-0 on day one, and then you never hear from them again. But so that might be me. Who knows? But we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. Okay, well that is it for us. We'll likely be back to preview EUIC, maybe sooner. We'll
Yeah.
see. But for now, that's it. So thank you as always for listening. Please let us know in the comments if you're kind of liking the direction we're taking things. If you want to see anything else from us,
Of course.
we really want to hear all your feedback and let us know if you beat us at the game. I would really like to know. But yeah, thank you always as always for listening, and we will catch you again next time.
See you guys.